Big news for anyone who loves the history of D-Day. Matt McLachlan Battlefield Tours has just launched a brand new tour that visits the D-Day beaches and lots of other sites in rural France, and all from the comfort of a luxurious cruise on the Seine River. Now, we ran this tour in 2024 and it was a huge success. It sold out in a matter of weeks. So now we've rolled it out again for 2025. But this time, there'll be 3 departures in June, July and September, giving you 3 times the opportunity to join us. The cruise is on board the luxurious Amadeus Diamond and begins and ends in Paris. Over 8 days, you'll enjoy the history, scenery and culture of the beautiful Seine River. But as an exclusive offering just for our passengers, you'll enjoy 2 full days touring the D-Day landing beaches in both the US and British sectors, plus daily seminars on board the ship that unpack the history of D-Day. And like all our tours, you'll be hosted by one of our expert historians who'll bring the story of D-Day to life. And if you've been on one of our tours before, you'll know that our historians really are the best there is. This is an exclusive cruise and places are extremely limited. Visit battlefields.com.au to book your place today.
Explaining football to the friend who's just there for the nachos? Hard. Tailgating from home like a pro with snacks and drinks everyone will love? An easy win. And with Instacart helping deliver the snack time MVPs to your door, you're ready for the game in as fast as 30 minutes. So you never miss a play or lose your seat on the couch or have to go head-to-head for the last chicken wing. Shop Game Day Faves on Instacart and enjoy $0 delivery fees on your first 3 grocery orders. Offer valid for a limited time. Other fees and terms apply. This episode is brought to you by Progressive Insurance. You chose to hit play on this podcast today. Smart choice. Make another smart choice with Auto Quote Explorer to compare rates from multiple car insurance companies all at once. Try it at progressive.com. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Not available in all states or situations. Prices vary based on how you buy.
A Living History production.
I'm Matt McLachlan.
And I'm Pete Smith.
We're battlefield historians who love nothing better than getting out and walking the ground where great battles in history took place.
And now we'd like you to come with us. Every week, BattleWalks will take you to one of the great battlefields of Europe.
As we walk the ground, we'll dig through the pages of history, we'll uncover the secrets of the battlefields, and most importantly, we'll tell the stories of the people who fought and died there.
Welcome to BattleWalks.
Good morning, everyone. Welcome to BattleWalks. My name's Peter Smith, and today I'm without Matt. I'm sitting in a cemetery beside a grave. It's a beautiful spring morning, sunny, quiet, no wind, skylarks. So just the perfect day for a walk. So the grave that I'm sitting beside is that of Lt Errol France, and that's what we're going to be talking about today. And this is a very personal story to me. Errol, and we'll call him Errol for most of this chat, I think, and this walk. Errol is a portrait. There's a portrait of him in my house. It's a big portrait, and I bought it many years ago from a little auction without any expectation of really knowing who he was. So what we're going to be doing is talking about the purchase of that portrait and the research needed to find out who he was, and sadly where he died. And this is where he's buried, in the cemetery here. I'm in Caterpillar Valley Cemetery, just outside of Longueval. So let's start with the purchase of it. It was a tip that I picked up many years ago, I suppose, from a rather dodgy antique dealing friend of mine. And that was that if you go to a posh auction, an expensive auction, there are still bargains to be found. And this is what I discovered. So on the 12th of February 1998, I found myself at a fine art sale in an auctioneer's called Lawrence's in Crewkerne in Somerset. And about a week earlier, I'd spotted this portrait of an officer, and it was described as Lot 563, an officer in army uniform, half-length, oil on canvas. So it's a big old painting. It's full size, and it's half of him. It's head to waist. My interest in the portrait, I suppose, was due to the quality and its size, and I suppose the faint hope that if I did get it home, that on the back would be some way of identifying who the sitter was. From experience, and I've been collecting Great War memorabilia for some time, I knew that it was highly likely that this young man would be a casualty. It's the reason for the paintings. These paintings were created by their relatives to commemorate them. It's very rare that you would get a large, expensive portrait like this without him having been a casualty. And I described it as he's resolutely staring out from a gilded frame, which acknowledges the sad fact that he probably died during the war, and that's exactly what it's going to be, unfortunately. So I waited nervously for the lot to come round that day in the sales room. I looked around. I couldn't see anybody that I recognise. It's one of those odd things about auctions. If you go to an awful lot, you start to recognise the people that are probably going to bid against you. Nobody in this sale room was going to bid against me. And so my opening bid of £200 actually secured it. Cheap for a full-size oil painting, I felt at the time, and in very good condition. The frame's in excellent condition. So I turned up the next day to take it home. Needed the porter to help me take it down from the wall and get it out to my car. And as we lifted it down and outside, I could see that there was a luggage label fluttering off the back. It'd been fastened onto the wire, hanging wire on the back. And so I hoped, and quite rightly, I discovered that his name was on the back. And what it actually said was Errol Ashburner, ex-Shanghai Customs, Worcestershire Regiment, killed at the Somme. And that's all it said. So I thought, well, that's fantastic. That's going to help me be able to research him. I'll be able to add a little plaque to the front, which is what I tend to do if it's something interesting, and find a suitable place to hang him on the wall at home. But it's the start of a 25-year mystery, which really is only fully resolved in the last week. As I started researching for this podcast, then I discovered a little bit more information, which will become apparent as we talk. So the first thing to do was, who was Errol Ashburner? And the simple answer is, nobody was Errol Ashburner. I couldn't find anybody at all serving in the war, never mind who became a casualty, called Errol Ashburner. And what I was using there was the medal index card. I was searching through the medal index cards to see if I could find anything on him. What was obvious was that the label on the back wasn't done to deceive. I mean, it could have been done deliberately, something on the front with the name of somebody to try and increase the value of it in the auction. But this was just a luggage label on the back, not mentioned in the auctioneer's catalogue. So definitely not done to deceive. So I knew that there was something not quite right in that description of his name. And my instant reaction, which was almost right, I suppose, in a way, was that perhaps Errol Ashburner was his first and middle name, and that his surname was not on there. So what evidence do we have? Well, the evidence was in the cap. I can see his cap, and it is the Worcestershire Regiment, and his collar dogs are also clearly visible. I also could make an assumption that the family was wealthy. They had to be wealthy enough to afford to have an oil painting produced of their son or relative. And a little bit about that, just for added information. For families who wanted to commemorate their relatives, there was multiple things they could do, and I suppose the smallest one was to have a postcard, that portrait of him that he had taken when he was in training, have that enlarged and put on the wall, and that would be a black and white photograph. If you could afford it, tint that photograph with a little bit of colour to add a bit of colour to it, or overpaint it. And I've got all of these examples in my collection, an overpainted photograph. So it's literally been overpainted with paints. And then finally, if you could really afford it, then a watercolour or an oil painting of your relative. I could also see an artist's signature on this portrait, Frank S. Ogilvie. Now we have to start thinking about when this would be. This is 1998. I'd only I think I'd got a computer then. No internet really, or just the early days of the internet. So to do the research, it was actually books in my own collection. It was going to libraries, and it was telephoning a network of friends all over the country and seeing if we could find anything else about him. CWGC, Commonwealth War Graves records, not online until 2014. So yeah, it was an interesting time. So if you were doing an awful lot of research, it meant a lot of legwork and a lot of rummaging through files. And in this case, I could find absolutely nothing about him whatsoever. I exhausted all of the available avenues. And you have to say that I then put him on the back burner. He was hung on the wall. And he became, I suppose, a portrait representing all of those young men, those officers who died in the Great War and are effectively missing or unknown. And we quite like that to a certain extent, and so there he was. 5 years later, in 2003, with a growing ways of digitised records and things online, I thought I'd have another crack at trying to track him down, but unfortunately, again, couldn't find anything. Nobody called Errol, nobody called Ashburner in the right regiment, and so the only success I had was in identifying the artist Frank Stanley Ogilvie, 1858 to 1937, well-known Victorian artist, specialising in portraits of the great and good in the Victorian and Edwardian society. There are examples of his work in the National Collection. So that's all really I discovered about him. In 2004 or thereabouts, it was when I relocated out here to the Somme battlefields of the Western Front in France, and we brought Errol with us. So he came with us, and he was hung in a place of prominence right above the fireplace, because our house was going to be a bed and breakfast, and I was going to start doing battlefield tours. So we wanted him to be a conversation piece, really, and I felt it was quite right for him to be here. And again, lots and lots over the years, lots of battlefield guests and people coming to stay at the house, and he was talked about and discussed, and people had ideas, and we did research, but still unable to track him down. So, moving on again, 2007. And I'm actually in this cemetery, so Caterpillar Valley Cemetery, and I'm working for a New Zealand camera crew. I've been taking them around the battlefields, visiting various locations, and it's a morning very similar to this, but considerably colder. A lot of frost on the ground, and they were, as cameramen and camera crews do, they were filming over and over again the same sequence. And I was trying to get a bit of warmth, and I was standing by the entrance, and there is that famous little box that you get in most of the Commonwealth War Graves cemeteries, where we have the register of who's buried in the cemetery, and also the visitor's book. And I was looking at a grave in front of me, and I just thought, well, I'll just have a quick look, see if there's any more information in the register. So I pulled out the register, and I opened it up, and as I'm thumbing through the pages, found the right page, looked at it, read the information I want. I'm literally closing the page, and I thought, hang on, I could see the name below it was Errol. I could see the first name, and it was Errol. And I thought, well, that's interesting, and quickly scan reading it. He's also an officer, and he's also in the Worcestershire Regiment. So I've got three of the perhaps most important details. And the immediate reaction was, well, I don't understand that, because I've checked there's nobody called Errol, officer or not, serving in the Worcestershire Regiment as far as I can tell. So the final kind of bit that I needed really a confirmation of was, where's the Ashburner bit come into it? And so skimming down, reading the last bit, and the last bit is a little bit of information from his nearest and dearest, which in this case happens to be his mother, and it says, only son of Mrs. Ashburner France of Longfield, East Sheen, London. So there it is. I've found him. Now you just have to think about that a little bit, because this certainly, to say that the hair stood up on the back of my neck would be an understatement, really. So I found Errol by utter luck. And what are the chances of it, of being in the right cemetery, opening up the right page of the register of who's in there, and just seeing his name? I have no idea what the chances are of doing that, but considering there's over 900 cemeteries in France and Belgium, and God knows how many pages in the registers, it's just absolutely extraordinary. In fact, I couldn't stop talking about it, and the film crew stopped filming, and they were rumming and ahhing whether to film me and just have a chat with me about what had just happened. But it was just extraordinary. So the immediate question, I suppose you have to ask, is why could I not find him in the medal index cards, which were available throughout most of that research period. Why could I not find him when his Christian name was Errol? And it's very simple. It had been badly transcribed, and so it had been transcribed as Enroll. And so if you did a search, as the records were computerized and digitized, then it was entered under Enroll as a Christian name. So what dawned on me very quickly was that doing traditional research, I could not have found him. I would not have found him, or certainly not have found him easily. And so on we go. I can carry out more research, which I did. First port of call, just grabbed it off my bookshelves, and I have to say a very good book called British Battalions on the Somme by a chap called Ray Westlake. And there we get a quick, brief fact that he was fighting just outside of Bazentin, Le Petit, and the attack on Intermediate Trench on the 30th of July, and that's the date of Errol's death. And so another thing dawned on me, as I'm going to do now, and this is exactly what I'm doing. I'm standing up and looking across towards Bazentin Le Petit. I can actually see it from here, and I can actually see the battlefield of where he sadly would lose his life. And so that was the first thing that was extraordinary, that he's very close, or close enough that you can actually view where he fought and lost his life. For those of you that want to come here at some stage to Caterpillar Valley Cemetery, it's very easy to locate, because on that skyline is the very famous communications mast that's right in the heart of the Somme. It's on a location known as the Windmill, where the Australians fought at Poitiers. If you look at the mast, it's black and white. It's red and white. If you look towards that mast, then one of the fields just below it, that is where he was fighting. So sitting down again now, and so it's that was one of the first things. So what I'm going to do then, of course, is get out the war diary and have a look at the war diary to discover what was going on. And I'm going to read you just a little bit. I won't read all of the war diary, but just a little bit. 0 hour was set for 6:10 p.m., so in the evening. The assault would take place in two lines. The first line would creep out on top of the ridge and rush the German line, which is Intermediate Trench. Immediately the barrage lifted, so this is when they would rush out, supported by the second line 75 yards behind. Thus the whole battalion would be clear of the trenches before 6:10 p.m. This was feasible as the German line was on the reverse side of the ridge. Now this is where we're going to walk, so we'll actually walk this down to the actual site of the battle a little later in the podcast. The attack, as far as the battalion was concerned, was a complete failure. So that's literally in the war diary. That's the next line. The King's Own and Warwickshire Regiment captured. These are the two battalions that are fighting alongside of them. The German trench on the right, but the latter regiment went too far to the right, thus leaving our right flank exposed, because they're attacking side by side here. Each company of the battalion appeared to wait for each other. So this is also telling you that they attacked a bit late. They didn't immediately attack, so there was a pause, and this pause will also cause a problem. So right flank open, pause before they attack. The barrage is getting away from them. And here, there was obviously a whole load of comments in the war diary, or paragraphs in the war diary. They're all deleted, so, and I've tried, you can't read them. So somebody decided not to report this in the war diary. It's all been scribbled out. Several Germans were seen leaving the trench during the mad minute. That's when we just bombard just before we attack. The glosses on the left also failed. The battalion tried to consolidate a line just below the ridge, but were continually under direct enfilade machine gun fire. That's coming in from their flank, and they were badly shelled and at dusk withdrew to our original lines. Casualties were officers killed. Second Lieutenant E.M. Martin France. So that's Errol. Wounded Captain E.F.H. Evans. Other ranks killed 13. Wounded 59. Missing 10, which gives you a total of 82 ranks being taken out of action during that battle. So that's quite substantial losses for a battalion of 1,000 men. From that, I was able to do a little bit more research, and I found the times for the August the 10th, 1916. Second Lieutenant Errol Martin France, Worcestershire Regiment, killed on July the 30th, was the only son of Mrs. J. Ashburn of France and stepson of Mr. James Ashburn of France of 3 Stanley Crescent. He served for several years in the HAC, so that's another little bit of snippet of information. He'd served in the Honourable Artillery Company, and I found out later that was from 1908 to 1912. So he had military experience. He left England in 1913 to take up a position in the Chinese Maritime Customs, so there's the connection to the Customs Service, Chinese Customs Service, commented upon on the label on the back of the portrait. On the outbreak of the war, he gave up this position, returned to England, and at once obtained his commission in the Worcestershire Regiment. A fellow officer writes, "He was one of the first over the parapet. Everyone says he did his bit like a man." So, very moving. So, this is where, I suppose, to a certain extent, where the story should finish. Really, I've done all the research. I know what happened to him. I know. Obviously, he's buried here. And just again, think about that. I've got the portrait on the wall, less than 2 kilometres away from where he's actually buried, and another kilometre away from where, sadly, he lost his life. And then there's another little bit of information that I worked out from all of this. That's kind of going across my desk. And that's the fact that from his medal index card, we can see when he first entered France. And unbelievably, he was only in France for 13 days before he was killed. So his experience of the war on active service lasted 13 days from arriving in France and then being killed. And he would have to say some of that time would be taken up in getting to his battalion. So he wouldn't know anybody or have been known by anybody when he's led his men over the top on that evening on the 30th of July 1960.
Ryan Reynolds here from Mint Mobile. With the price of just about everything going up during inflation, we thought we'd bring our prices down. So to help us, we brought in a reverse auctioneer, which is apparently a thing.
Mint Mobile Unlimited Premium Wireless. How to get 30, 30, bit to get 30, bit to get 20, 20, 20, bit to get 20, 20, bit to get 15, 15, 15, 15, just $15 a month? Sold! Give it a try at mintmobile.com/switch.
$45 upfront payment equivalent to $15 per month. New customers on first 3-month plan only. Taxes and fees extra. Speed slower above 40 gigabytes. See detail.
Ready to pop the question? The jewelers at BlueNile.com have got sparkle down to a science with beautiful lab-grown diamonds worthy of your most brilliant moments. Their lab-grown diamonds are independently graded and guaranteed identical to natural diamonds, and they're ready to ship to your door. Go to BlueNile.com and use promo code LISTEN to get $50 off your purchase of $500 or more. That's code LISTEN at BlueNile.com for $50 off. BlueNile.com, code LISTEN.
Hey, it's Mark Maron from WTF here to let you know that this podcast is brought to you by Progressive Insurance. And I'm sure the reason you're listening to this podcast right now is because you chose it. Well, choose Progressive's Name Your Price tool, and you could find insurance options that fit your budget, so you can pick the best one for your situation. Who doesn't like choice? Try it at Progressive.com. And now, some legal info. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Price and coverage match limited by state law. Not available in all states.
When it comes to weight loss, no 2 people are the same. That's why Noom builds personalized plans based on your unique psychology and biology. Take Brittany. After years of unsustainable diets, Noom helped her lose 20 pounds and keep it off.
I was definitely in a yo-yo cycle for years of just losing weight, gaining weight, and it was exhausting.
And Stephanie. She's a former D1 athlete who knew she couldn't out-train her diet, and she lost 38 pounds.
My relationship to food before Noom was never consistent.
And Evan, he can't stand salads, but he still lost 50 pounds with Noom.
I never really was a salad guy. That's just not who I am. Even through the pickiness, Noom taught me that building better habits builds a healthier lifestyle. I'm not doing this to get to a number. I'm doing this to feel better.
Get your personalized plan today at Noom.com. Real Noom users compensated to provide their story. In 4 weeks, the typical Noom user can expect to lose 1 to 2 pounds per week. Individual results may vary.
So, knowing I was going to tell this story, as I'm doing at the moment, I decided literally last week to have one last crack at if I could find anything else about him before I did the podcast. And I thought, let's have a look at his mother, first of all, because I don't know anything about his mother. And his mother obviously was, reading between the lines, probably by herself by the time that she wrote the epitaph on his headstone. And the epitaph says, "In memory of my darling only boy, always missed by his mother." Well, this just opened a can of worms when I went onto Ancestry, because, again, Ancestry hadn't been available to the extent it is. I mean, it's always improving what's on there. Other people do research and add their research to the files on individuals. And so I was able to add this stunning piece of information. Errol was born on the 6th of May in 1889 in London. Again, you're reading between the lines here, you know that these are fairly wealthy people. His father was Eugene Martin Satcherchetel. Now, I have no idea if I'm saying that right, and from previous podcasts, if you've listened, you'll know that my pronunciation of foreign names is not good. Let's try it again. Satcherchetel. Probably not pronounced, I bet you it's pronounced Sach, but anyway, he's of Berlin, from Berlin in Germany. So his father was actually a German living in Berlin, and his mother, Miriam Ada Bibro, was born in Manchester, but she was also of German parents, and they were married by a rabbi being of the Jewish faith. So his parents were Jewish Germans, effectively. And so that absolutely floored me, because I just kind of kept looking at him and imagining that he was a prime example of I suppose, somebody from the empire. Well, he is. He is. Let's put it that way. He is, and but he certainly didn't start with the name France. So both parents seem to have been relatively wealthy, but Eugene seems to have had a checkered career. That's his father, being declared bankrupt multiple times. Miriam, his mum, was in fact a vocalist and became well known in upper middle class circles as Minnie Chattel. I tried looking up to try and find a little bit more information about her, but I can't find anything readily. I'm sure there will be some more information about it, apart from a photograph. I did find a photograph of her. Her sister Ivy was born on the 1st of July in 1892. By 1907, it looks like Miriam's marriage to Eugene seems to have broken down, and she had formed a relationship with James Ashburn of France, and this is where we get the France name coming in. In 1908, Errol joined the Honourable Artillery Company, and he's already using the name France at that point. Errol's father died in 1910 in Berlin, so it looks like they were separated. He'd gone back to Germany, was in Berlin. And in 1912, Errol sailed for Canada using that surname France, and then on to China, where he joined the Chinese Customs Services in Shanghai. And in March 1913, Miriam actually married James Ashburn of France, and that's because his wife was still living. In those days, people just didn't get divorced. His wife was still living until 1913. She died, and it left him then open to marry Miriam, so that they married in 1913. And that's also when Errol then legally changes his name to France. So on the 19th of December 1914, Errol arrived back in the UK from Shanghai, and as we know, the rest is history. Immediately joined his regiment. Final little bit of snippet of information that I discovered was his will, and that he left, the probate was left to his stepfather, and it's very obvious that his stepfather and himself got on very well. Reading between the lines, you can see that they obviously liked each other, and their address at that time was 3 Stanley Crescent, Kensington Park Gardens in Middlesex, and he left £532. James Ashburn, his stepfather, died on the 3rd of December in 1923. So that's why we're seeing that most of the information appears to be just coming from his mother, because his father was dead, his stepfather was dead, and his sister and his mother appear to be the people that were adding the information to the register, etc. in the cemetery here. So what we're going to do now is just do a gentle walk. It's downhill most of the way, into the valley, and we have Thistle Dump Cemetery on our right. We can just see from this cemetery, we can see Thistle Dump Cemetery. So I'm just going to head off. I'm not going to walk all the way and record all the way because it's a little too far. I can't find enough to say for the whole of that journey. So we'll just walk onto the road and walk down the road a little bit, and then I'm going to turn you off for a second, and we'll start again as we get nearer to some of the things I want to point out. So the first thing to point out, on the right hand side, we can see Thistle Dump Cemetery. High Wood is on our right-hand side as we're walking down the road, so we can see High Wood, a place infamous. I think I've discussed High Wood in previous podcasts, so we'll do nothing else and just mention that it's estimated that between 8,000 and 10,000 people are still left in the wood. Their remains are left in the wood, so it's a scene of very heavy fighting. So Thistle Dump Cemetery was created during that period, when the 47th London Division was actually attacking the wood. It was lost during the German advance in 1918 again, as the Germans overran this area in their spring offensive. 144 identified casualties, so it's only a small cemetery, and of that, how many do we have that are known? Just stopping so I can read my notes. 196 servicemen of the First War buried or commemorated in the cemetery. 59 of the burials are unidentified, but there are special memorials to 4 casualties known to be buried amongst them. The cemetery all contains 7 German war graves as well, and that gives us a clue. And also there is another clue with the name of it, Dump. And again, I think I've discussed it in previous podcasts. A dump has a kind of connotations that you don't want to think about, really, but it's not that at all. It is about the changeover spot for battalion stretcher bearers bringing their wounded back, or men themselves finding their own way back to one of these positions. And it's a changeover. It's where there will be RAMC, Royal Army Medical Corps personnel, who will then take him further back on their road to the hospital and to the coast. So just passing... It's on our right-hand side in the bottom of the valley. And then we're going to come across a calvary on our right, a cross, a roadside cross. And again, this is associated with the fighting to take High Wood, because High Wood dominates the crest on our right-hand side. And the calvary here, as we get in front of it and stop in front of it, is it's rusty and it's very obviously old. It's of Christ on the cross, and it's made out of steel, so it's iron, I suspect, cast iron. And we can see that the thigh of Christ has a shrapnel hole through it. So it's one of... I've read people saying one of only a few still on the battlefields, but I think there are a lot more than we imagine. I know, for example, there's one just behind my house that has survived. It's got shrapnel holes through it as well, but it's off a major walking path. It's on, just sitting literally behind my house. So I think there are more about than people imagine. But this one's famous because it was commented upon in lots of battalions' diaries, certainly the battalions that assaulted up towards High Wood, because it was a place of shelter. And if you imagine a kind of a Christian symbol for men that were Christians, to look at it and think, I'm about to go into hell when I leave the shelter of this sunken road. And so it's mentioned in many soldiers' diaries. So we're going to carry on walking. I'm just going to turn it off now, because we're going to walk a little way down the hill into a place called Bazentin Le Petit. Bazentin Le Grand is on our left. Now, interestingly, Bazentin Le Grand is just a farm, and Bazentin Le Petit is now a village. So it's actually reversed. The big has become a farm, and the small has become the village. And we're going to then walk up through the village, and I'll rejoin you then. So I'm just going to turn it off for a few minutes. Okay, so back on again. Here we are, and we're at a location that I've known about for a long time, and ever since I've been coming to the Somme, and lots of people drive past it, and it's a memorial to the 9 brave men. So what is that? Well, it's a little low brick-built memorial with an inset that is in, I suspect that it's Jurassic limestone, as a lot of the memorials are made out of Jurassic limestone. And upon it, let me just looking at my notes again. So that was the actual wording. Right, let's go across and have a look rather than try and read my notes. So to 9 brave men, and it's Royal Engineers, and what they were doing, they were building defensive positions on the 30th, so this is the 29th and 30th, that period when Errol was actually killed. And I'm going to read you an excerpt from the Sapper, which is the journal of the Royal Engineers, and it's the story of the men that went up. So number 3 and 4 sections had to go up at dusk through the little village of Bazentin to wire some tactical points gained during the day's fighting. They had 2 or 3 men hit on the way up, and then for 3 or 4 hours they carried on their work under a hellish storm of high explosives and machine gun fire. The work was considered vitally necessary. Accordingly, Lieutenant Howlett carried on steadfastly with 4 section and CSM Drymore with 3 section till the work was through. 6 killed and 19 wounded out of the 40. I added the names of 3 others who died with great heroism, sticking it in the same way on the previous night, thus making up the tale of the 9 brave men. 3 days later, 82 Field Company left the area and Captain Butterworth handed over command. However, I had written to each of the next of kin of the 9 men, adding that I marked the spot and would go back some day and put up a little stone to their memory. I had a block of granite engraved in the divisional workshops in November 1917. We collected bricks from the ruins nearby and so constructed our small tribute of affection and respect to the memory of our 9 brave comrades. So that's the story of the building of this little memorial. Now, I've known this little memorial ever since that, as I said, since I've been coming, and it's been over the years clonked by cars, hit by vehicles. It's deteriorated, and it's gone through several periods of being renovated, and now it's in very good condition. So it's got another little plaque on it. This memorial was refurbished by 82 Squadron Junior Leaders Regiment, Royal Engineers, August 8, 1989. In a lot of the online work I've been doing, that is the final comment. But in fact, it has been repaired since then. It was considerably rebuilt in the period that I've been here as well. So it's still in very good condition, and much I think liked by the villagers themselves. They keep a check on it, making sure it's all right. It normally has flowers in the front, so it's a lovely little memorial. And then what we're going to do is I'm just squatted down close to it at the moment. I'm going to just pick up my notes and we'll walk down a little lane that is leading us back towards High Wood. So it's slightly climbing. So up towards High Wood, we can see High Wood again on the crest. High Wood dominates this area. We can see it from all over. We can also see London Cemetery up in front of the wood as well. And what we're going to come across in a second on our right-hand side, just set back from the road, and I can see it as we're approaching it, and it's another Calvary. So this time it's in wood as opposed to in steel. It's a carved Jesus with a little piece of timber over the top that protects him. So going to a point, I'm sure you know what I mean. So it's a little bit of timber over the top that forms like a little, almost a roof over the top of the Calvary. So I'll stop here. And again, I think back a few years to when I first came here. This was not in brilliant condition. Now it is in fairly good condition. Having said that, I always want to come down here and do a bit of weeding around it, and also to clean off the plaque at the bottom, which is actually unreadable at the moment. So it does need a little bit of work doing. So what does it say? Well, this is a memorial commemorating a Captain H.S.H. Wallace. Now, why I've come here, and this is right on the lane where Errol attacked from on that evening of the 30th of July. So it's right on his battlefield on the edge. So he would have been here, and Captain H.S.H. Wallace had actually been killed in action a few days earlier on the 22nd of July. This is the 30th, and he's missing. And so this oak crucifix on its little cairn was on this road to High Wood, was actually put there by his mother. And I just found that very, very moving. He's from the same battalion, so he's also from the 10th Worcestershire Regiment. So same battalion. Would they have known each other? Well, almost certainly not, because Errol would have arrived and had just been settling in. It's the middle of an awful lot of fighting taking place, and so I suspect that Captain Wallace would have really not had chance to have met him and got to know him before both of them were killed. So he's missing. He's on the memorial at Teepval, commemorating his service and his loss here. Why is the memorial here? Because this is where he was seen to have been buried. There was a report that he had been buried very close to a calvary. Now that calvary had been destroyed, and so hence his mother. She didn't actually purchase it. She got permission from the Imperial War Graves at the time and the village. She'd asked both whether she could go ahead and put it up. There were very few people in the village to ask, and I don't think she even got a response from the Imperial War Graves. They just note that it's there later on, and she had it built. She had this carving done of Christ on the cross, and had it placed there on a cairn of stones. It again fell into disrepair after the Second World War, as a lot of these private memorials did. Obviously, nobody was looking after them during that period. There were no battlefield pilgrims coming across here during the German occupation. So an awful lot of these private memorials fell into disrepair. And so it deteriorated. Nobody looked after it. And it would look like it was on its way out. In fact, the crucifix had gone, and in 1980, inquiries by a group called the Western Front Association as to what had happened to it just find that it actually still survives, and that it would be repaired by a local man, a local carpenter, and he had kept the original. He repaired it. He was a chap called Andre Brunet, a carpenter in the village, and the Western Front Association managed to get some money together, and they had it, the wording, which needs renewing again at the bottom, they had it coloured in, the letters coloured in and replaced, and so it's back here, thankfully, and it's in fairly good condition. But as I say, every time I come down here, I always want to bring a scrubbing brush and a bit of paint to get it done. So I say it looked after by the villagers, so hopefully somebody in the village will do it. I always feel wary of treading on people's toes, as they say, if you go and start doing things without permission from the local people. But it's here, and it commemorates him, and it's a good way to finish this podcast, because we're now standing looking up literally into the field where Errol lost his life. And in fact, I haven't mentioned this, Errol was actually buried here in the field in a very small cemetery that existed up until the early 1920s, when it was closed down and he was concentrated to where he is now in Caterpillar Valley Cemetery. So I hope you've enjoyed the bit of a long-winded story of a portrait that's above my fireplace, but it gives me great pleasure, and hopefully the story will of interest you. What I'm going to do is I'll put on our Facebook page. I'll add a few photographs of the portrait and of Errol's grave and of the memorials that we've talked about in the walk down through Bazentin Le Petit. So I'm going to go and enjoy the rest of this beautiful day, and I'll speak to you again soon.
Thank you very much for listening. Don't forget to follow us through social media, where you can learn more about each episode we've just recorded on Facebook and on Twitter under the tag BattleWalks. You can find us there, and more information about each episode. Also, if you would like to support the podcast, you can now buy us a coffee. This is a great way for fans of the podcast to contribute a small amount, which really helps keep the podcast going and bring you new episodes. So if you want to support us, go to buymeacoffee.com/BattleWalks. Thank you for listening to us, and we'll see you next week.
Hey, it's Mark Maron from WTF, here to let you know that this podcast is brought to you by Progressive Insurance. And I'm sure the reason you're listening to this podcast right now is because you chose it. Well, choose Progressive's Name Your Price tool, and you could find insurance options that fit your budget, so you can pick the best one for your situation. Who doesn't like choice? Try it at Progressive.com. And now, some legal info. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Price and coverage match limited by state law. Not available in all states.
At Jiffy Lube, we car about cars. In fact, we're kind of obsessed. That's why we've been taking care of business with quick quality oil changes and service for over 40 years. And with things like our Carful Vehicle Review, where our experts will check, fill, clean, and inspect your vehicle, you'll know we'll car for your car like we car for our own. Jiffy Lube. Car more.
Visit JiffyLubeDC.com to find a Jiffy Lube service center near you.